Hey folks, it's Mark Murphy with TravelTube.com. Great to be back with you. Again, TravelTube.com is the travel expert channel, and that's why I feature travel agents as well as travel influencers, suppliers, and destinations, which are coming soon, because we want to be able to get that information out to you and take this fragmented industry where you have a lot of people traveling all over the world to different places at different times, and we want to bring that collective knowledge together in a single visual platform, which is traveltube.com. Of course, consumers come here as well. We see that through our traffic, and the traffic's been building very nicely over the last 9 months, but we can't do it without the travel agent market out there actively sharing this information, promoting it, and most importantly, following traveltube.com on the site as well as on our on your favorite podcast apps, because the content can be consumed anywhere. It's a podcast, but the video is nice. And that's how we spread it across TikTok, everything else. And if you're a travel agent, you're going to want to be interviewed on this platform, because guess what? Average interview gets over 10,000 views across all of our followers and the main platform. And we're not even a year old, and we're only going to get bigger and better. So with that said, I appreciate those who are following and sharing, and I'd encourage others to do the same, because you've had one person, which is me, do more to promote the value of travel agents on national TV over the last 15, 16, 17 years than all others combined. And I can make that statement without even blushing, it's not a brag, it's just a fact. In fact, 1 year, my reach was over 110 million consumers hearing a piece of travel-related content, where in many cases I mentioned the value of travel agents. Yeah, that's what I do. 110 million people. And that wasn't like an outlier. That was just 1 year. And I had a great publicist. Shout out to Anna D'Souza. Did a great job getting me in front of these people. And even to this day, she gets requests. And just this week, I went on Newsmax. So with that said, like, follow, share, everywhere you see traveltube.com if you want to support travel agents and the industry. So starting today, this is what I'm going to do to kind of lay out the show for you. I'm going to talk a little bit about everything from the partial government shutdown and how that's impacting travel, and a segment I did on Newsmax where, yet again, I gave a shout out to travel agents. I'm going to get into geography lessons. You know, I always laugh, like Europeans are like, oh, Americans so unsophisticated. They only speak, one language for the most part, and blah, 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 blah. We speak 3, 4, 5, 6 languages. Okay, cool. I'm going to give you a little geography lesson on that. I'm going to get into the politics of travel, how politics are driving people from visiting certain destinations. The assigned seating debacle with Southwest is getting better. Some people are getting hammered. And I don't know. You can tell me whether the passenger was correct or Southwest was correct. What about a hotel stay when it's when you're going to take a cruise? Is a hotel stay cheaper than missing your cruise? Like booking one night at a hotel to make sure you get there early? Yeah, unless you're planning on spending the night in a $30,000 penthouse for one night. Yeah, it's going to be a lot cheaper just to book a hotel pre-stay. And these folks that missed their cruise, yeah, they missed it. Carnival took off. They filed a formal complaint. Carnival said, sorry, not our problem. So who's right here? They missed the cruise. Who's right? And also, can you lose travel perks because you protest? Yeah, somebody just lost their TSA PreCheck and global entry, but hold on. I thought Americans were allowed to protest. What is up with that? What's up with that? If I want to go out and protest something, do I run the risk of losing my travel perks? In some cases, yeah, we're going to get into that. So again, like, subscribe, and follow us everywhere. Support those who support you if you're in the travel industry. And now I'm going to get into what I did this week with Newsmax. So on Newsmax, I always get asked to come on and talk about things that are happening. So government shutdowns, impact on travel. high booking periods, flight issues, software went down. So therefore flights got canceled. What should travelers do? I always get the call before the holidays when they want to talk about, what should people have done? And I always say, and it's like a broken record, you should have called me 3 months ago. I would have told you how to book it the right way. I would have told you to take the extra day or two to get there so you didn't miss the cruise. But now you missed the cruise. So who am I helping? I don't know. At least I'm going to be able to get out there and spread the word about travel agents, which is exactly what I did yet again. And happy to do it. Very happy to do it. But at the same time, people have to understand that, you know what? I need your support in order to keep doing this. I can't, I'm one guy. You guys are tens of thousands of agents who are benefiting from what I do. Yet many of you don't bother to follow, like, subscribe, or do jack shit. You know what I mean? Can't go on forever. We're doing great, but we want to do a lot better, and we need your support. So get off your ass and do the right thing and support those who support you, which is basically me, folks. I'm doing it. I don't know anybody else is, but I'm certainly doing it. And here's just one example. Let me just get to the start point here. And we're talking about travel, and we're talking about spring break. So listen for like 30 seconds, and you'll once again hear me talk about the value of travel agents.
Paycheck. So again, I guess we have to expect possibly very long lines if they stop showing up for work, right?
2 months. You're just getting any issue with that. But whenever you have busy travel periods like spring break, and it's now spread over about the next 2 months, you're always going to have more delays, more cancellations. So I would always have a backup plan. If you can change your flight because you're going to go out on a cruise, get in a day ahead of time and give yourself a backup option of driving to the port if you see an issue with your flights. And I always recommend using a travel agent because those folks will give you that kind of advice at the time of booking. They'll tell you to go ahead and book that pre-stay for the cruise ship, so you're not chasing the cruise as it's running, as it's going off the pier, and you're one of those pier runners that we see that make for great TikToks.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you both.
There you go. All right. So for you travel agents out there, that's what I do. I support what you're doing, and I'm happy to do that. So again, support those who support you. I think that's fairly reasonable. I don't get paid to do those interviews. I don't get paid to mention travel agents. I get no benefit, zero. But I'm not going to change my perspective because I don't get paid for it. I'm going to share my perspective, and you benefit. Now, all I'm asking for is you to click that share button, you to sign up with your email at traveltube.com. You're actually going to be a better travel agent as a result of that, because you're going to learn more from your peers, and you're going to learn even from these travel influencers. Some of them are excellent at capturing content around the world, and I'm going to be interviewing some of those folks as well. And if you're a travel agent and you just got back from a trip, or you've got some experience you want to share, I would love to invite you on. Just go to the bottom of traveltube.com, click on, travel agents get featured, and fill it out. I get the email, and I'll reach out, and we will schedule a convenient time to do that. But now I want to get into geography. In particular, our friends in Europe. And the thing about our friends in Europe, they seem to think that you're not sophisticated if you're an American and you don't speak multiple languages. And I saw this guy, and he was talking about how amazing the US is and how big it is, and oh my gosh, this and that. Remember, we have 50 states, 50. Many of them are completely unique geographically, weather and climate, customs and culture, food. I mean, it's amazing. Our country is absolutely amazing from that standpoint. And yes, English is our primary language. We have no reason to learn another language if we live in the United States. And to illustrate that point, here's a map of Europe. So in this map of Europe, it gives you an idea of, you got Portugal, over here you got Ireland, the UK, up here we got Sweden and Norway, off to the right is Finland, then we've got Estonia, Latvia, Poland, the Netherlands, Croatia down here, Serbia, Greece all the way down here. Okay. Why do I show you this? I show you this because of this. This map shows every one of those countries basically being able to get stuffed into the United States. So yeah, if I lived in France and went over to Germany, they speak German, I speak French. So imagine I live in New Jersey and I'm going to New York and they speak a different language. And I can get there in an hour, hour and a half, whatever it is. Some cases it might take a few hours. If I want to drive to Ohio, it's going to take 6 hours just to get across Pennsylvania. So put that into perspective, my European friends and allies. It takes 6 hours to drive across one state. That's Pennsylvania. It takes a long time. So when I think about it, I just go and look at Ohio. Look at the time it takes to go across Ohio. Look at the time it takes to go all the way across Texas. If you start out in West Texas and go all the way across, let's say you're heading to New Orleans, it takes a long time. Imagine if you had to go through 3 states in the US and every state had their own language. Yeah, you'd speak multiple languages. You would be raised speaking multiple languages. But it's a bit disingenuous in Europe to be like, oh, I can't believe you do not speak multiple languages. Because we've never had to. In fact, there are people that have never left the United States, ever. I'm not one of them. I love traveling. I've been to around 80 countries, give or take. I don't know the exact number, but a ton. And all around the world. At the same time, I don't need to learn new languages to travel around the world for a few reasons. Now, there's some places like when I was in Korea, nobody's speaking English. You need a translator. Now there are apps that help you do that. Okay, cool. But no one's going to learn Korean to go on a Korean vacation in South Korea. But if you're in Portugal, you speak Portuguese. Right next door, you speak what? Oh, yeah, Spanish. You go up, you speak French. You hang a right. What are you speaking there? German? I mean, Polish? Greek? Italian? Like, again, if you can fit all of these countries inside the United States, and we were broken up like Europe is. I know the EU is trying to create their own version of the United States. Not going out, not working real well for the folks who live in Europe. No offense. You're ruled by unelected bureaucrats that dictate your life. But hey, you guys set it up. And you open the floodgates. You're going to have to start learning a few new languages, I guess. But yeah, it's a completely different environment. There's no comparison. And geographically, if you wanted to drive across the United States and you averaged, I don't know, 60, 70 miles an hour driving straight across the United States and you didn't stop, it's like 2,500 miles. Take 2,500 divided by 70. What do you come up with? You're driving for more than 24 hours. I want to drive out to see my kids in Colorado. Cool. From South Florida to Colorado, it's going to be about 2,000 miles. Takes 24 hours. Actually, about 26 hours of actual driving if I didn't stop. If you drove 26 hours in Europe, how many countries would you go through and how many different languages would you be exposed to? So again, I always find it interesting. I don't think that people in the US are, quote, uncultured because they don't speak multiple languages. I think it's just a fact of the massive size of the country, the diversity of the country, but all with the same language. Now, I will have a caveat to this, and I will say that when Captain Lou, who is Cajun, took me out on an airboat tour south of New Orleans, yeah, I had a tough time understanding that accent. But he was speaking English. He was speaking English. But man, I had to hang in there to listen to that and to be able to understand it. It's kind of like when an American goes to Scotland and hears the Scottish folks in Glasgow talking, like, what? It's English, but the accents, man, whew. And I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way when they come from overseas and are down in the deep South, and some of the heavy dialects and the heavy accents there. But anyway, that's just like just a little fact out there. I always think it's important to share reality checks, and that's just a reality check. So the next thing I want to get into is this Southwest Airlines situation. So on Southwest Airlines, have you guys been following some of the stuff I've been doing? So I've been looking at Southwest Airlines. They changed the seating. They basically said, if you're an obese traveler, yeah, you know, you're going to have to buy a second seat. And if you're if you show up and you haven't bought a second seat and you can't fit in the main seat, they're going to charge you for that second seat there at the airport. And people are upset. It's like, why should I be, you know, charged more? Well, if you take up two seats, you got to be charged for two seats. If you have a 200-pound piece of luggage, it's going to be different than somebody who brings a backpack. I mean, these things are important when you're flying planes. But with that said, people are booking flights and they're upset when they show up at the airport and everyone's sitting in a different spot and they've got kids. So I want you to tell me who's right here. And I'm going to share a couple of things with you. First thing I'm going to share is this story that ran in the New York Post. Dad slammed for blaming Southwest Airlines for not seating him with his toddler. You know, they're calling him a cheapskate as a result of refusing to pay for the seat selection on the flight. Father of two was forced to sit separately from his tots. And people are taking the airline side. Okay. And then he went to Twitter to share his rather frustrating experience. Here it is. And check this out. So let me just get to it. Hold on. There we go. You should be seeing it now. So he went on Twitter and he was bitching about, you know, basically these people not realizing that he had kids. And he makes a good point. So here, this might surprise you. I believe if you want to sit together on a flight, you need to pay the extra money to get your assigned seats. So you're all sitting together. I believe you have to do that. At the same time, the airline has ages, you know, like break out your age. How old are your kids? You know, one kid's 5, one kid's, 2 years of age. Under that scenario, the software should say, hey, it looks like you're having minors on the plane that aren't old enough to sit by themselves. So therefore, you're going to need to pay for assigned seats. It didn't do that. He made the booking. He figured that would factor in. And again, this comes back to travel agents. If a travel agent booked this trip, would they have not gotten assigned seats? Would they not said to the father, listen, they're going to put you wherever they put you? Because they'd go to book it and because you choose your seats if you want to choose your seats, right? But if you don't choose your seats, it's whatever's left over. They just scatter you around the plane. And there's a disconnect there. So I definitely see both sides, but something needs to be done about that, because if somebody, human error, does not designate that they're going to sit next to that they've got a 2-year-old and they've put that in the system, yet you're going to sit a 2-year-old where like away from the guy he's traveling with, that makes no sense. But at the same time, back to the travel agents, travel agent would do that and say, listen, you're going to have to do that. Otherwise you could be sitting all over the plane. And then that's going to create a mess for you at the airport. And then you're going to be negotiating with the gate agent. You're going to be negotiating with people on the flight, because most people aren't going to want to be sitting next to a 2-year-old unless they're related to them. Fact. So where do you stand on that? Some people will agree with that. Some people agree with Southwest. Some people agree with the father. I'm a little torn, but in the end, I would default to the father, because if you're going to take a transaction, bill a credit card, and you have the data on the ages of the travelers, and you know for a fact that they need to be sitting together, then someone needs to pick up the phone and call those people, or there's got to be a pop-up, something in the software that indicates that, no, anybody traveling with children under the age of X, you need to pay for assigned seats in the case of Southwest or any other airline that does that, that doesn't let you just pick the regular crappy seats all the way in the back, middle, middle seats, et cetera. And if they're not available, then you just have to pay the premium and just deal with it. So where do you stand on that? Again, who the hell knows? I stand with the traveler, and I think they've got to fix that on the software side. So politics of travel. It's funny. During COVID, I started doing a podcast, and I called it, and even back before then, when I owned travelpulse.com, I called it the intersection of travel, finance, and politics, because travel is impacted by politics and finance. Economy does well, more disposable income. People have more experiences via travel. Politics, geopolitics, wars, right? Obviously, it has a massive impact on travel. But we're seeing something that, until Trump came along, especially the second term, I don't remember hearing this in the first term. But when Trump came along here in the second term, there are, people in Canada like, I'm not traveling to the U.S. because that man, orange guy, is really bad, and I'm not coming till he's gone. Great. Justin Trudeau was your prime minister. He's a putz. He's destroyed your country. Carney's not helping you in any way. And I actually started a company in Canada back around 2014 and 15, 16, whatever the hell it was. I have to go back and look at a calendar, because as you get older, you forget, like, what year did we start that company, Jim? I remember, I think we were in a horse and buggy. Well, yeah. Did I ever say, oh, I'm not going to start a company in Canada because I don't like the prime minister, or I'm not going to travel there and go to Toronto in the summer because I don't like Trudeau, bad man. Whatever. The country is not the prime minister. The country is not the president. The country is not the politicians. However, we see the impact. What's happening in Japan right now, which has been a top destination for Chinese travelers, they're down 61% of inbound Chinese travelers because China doesn't like how Japan is talking about China with their incursions into their territorial waters, the overfishing. There's a whole host of things that are going on in that region, and it's impacting travel. We're seeing it with Canadians. Now, I go back to a podcast I did months ago where I'm just like, who in their right mind would be like, I live in Florida, I come here for 6 months a year to get out of the cold of Canada, and I've been doing it for 10, 15 years, but now I'm leaving because Trump's bad. So I'm going to sell my house, take the hit, maybe not get back into the market at the same price, because prices continue, at least on the East Coast here, between the Miami-Fort Lauderdale corridor, continue to rise. And they're going to leave because, they don't like Trump. The guy's going to be gone in 3 years. Make that make sense. But they use travel as a wedge, and they know that travel brings an economic impact. So China's politicians want to hurt Japan, and they don't want their Chinese citizens traveling to Japan to support that economy. And you get the same attitude out of Canada, right? Canada was totally fine charging our dairy producers 240% tariffs. But when we said, okay, you want to charge us a tariff, we're going to charge you a tariff. Oh, well, you can't do that, because we were getting screwed. And there's a lot of hyperbole that comes out of Trump's mouth. It just is what it is. And there's so many people that get like all caught up on, oh, he just said this. And I'm like, can you guys distinguish between hyperbole and exaggeration and the actual underlying fact. Underlying facts were we were getting the tariff to death from foreign governments. We put on what are called reciprocal tariffs. And a lot of it is a negotiating tool. How's it worked out? All the experts said we were going to have massive runaway inflation. Inflation is almost non-existent today, down from a peak of 9% under Biden. Did anybody bitch? Did the same people bitch about 9% inflation under Biden? I didn't hear them. But now we're down, trending to under 2% inflation. And they're like, oh, he hasn't dropped prices. Oh, Lord. Yeah, because he said he was going to drop prices on day one. Well, it's day two. Did he drop the prices yet? Why aren't the prices down? What happened? Look, he lied to the public. Oh, my God. F-ICE, F-ICE, F-Trump. Yeah. And the media is the number one reason why people are so nuts today. Not because of actual facts, but they're like that because of how the so-called facts are displayed or completely misrepresented, or how they take something. And this is what's so crazy about the media. I'm going off on a little tangent here, but follow with me. Back in 2015, I never thought Trump stood a chance. I out of the 17 people, I think at the time that were running the primary, I thought he was 17. So, that was my take, because I didn't see it as a serious run. I saw it as a way to grab attention. Scott Adams, God rest his soul, recently passed away, was one of the first people to say he's going to win. Not only is he going to get win the primary, he's going to win the election. I was like, what? So you fast forward and you go back to that time and you go forward, a little bit. Were people boycotting the U.S.? Were they talking about all this stuff? Were they like, I'm not traveling there till he's gone? I didn't hear it. Were people selling their houses if they're Canadians in Florida because of Trump's the president? I don't remember it. I do remember going to international conferences during the whole Iraq-Afghanistan war and getting lectured to by the folks that live in Europe that are protected under our $1 trillion a year spending in military and NATO, where we carry the lion's share, and bitching about what we were doing in Iraq and Afghanistan and how we're terrible people and, Bush is this, Bush that. So it's like, it doesn't matter who's in office. They love Obama. Please, what do we get from Obama? We got Obamacare. It was going to save $2,500 per family. I only saw premiums go up about 150% for a family of four in my company in about 4 years. So kudos to all those morons that were libtards that voted for it in my company, because when you have journalists, you have people that can't do math, just so you know. But they thought they were going to get free healthcare, and they were tired of having to pay $250 per month for a family of four with Aetna coverage where, your deductible is $1,000, right? Well, how's that working out today, folks? You saving a lot of money with that Obamacare? Yeah, because it went to over $2,000. It went well over $2,000. But I'll just give you an example. At $2,000, I cut my contribution in half. So I still ended up paying far more. Instead of $750, I had to pay $1,000, but then they had to pick up $1,000. Because I'm like, I'll pick up 50% of this new number. And eventually I raised it like 55, whatever. But I was like, yeah, you guys voted for it. God bless you. God bless you. What else did he give us? He gave us Dodd-Frank. What did that do? As a business owner, that made it impossible for the community banks I did business with to continue lending to me. So in a business that's driven by advertising, where you bill people and you wait 30, 60, 90 days to get paid, on average, it's about 90 days. Or for my friends in the Mexican government who screwed me out of $500,000 at the time of my sale. Quintana Roo, thank you so much for never paying your bill and taking 2.5, 3 years to never pay your damn bill. And I have to float the costs of my company during that period. So I do what's called a line of credit that's attached to my accounts receivable. So if I had $3 million in receivables that I was waiting on, and my overhead's $1 million a month, I could borrow up to $2.5 million of that 3 million outstanding receivables. Then it got cut to $1.5 million, then $1 million, then $750,000, then $500,000. They basically said, look, we can't do business with you anymore, despite the fact we were a great business for this small bank to do business with. And then all the big banks were like, yeah, we're not interested. You're too small. I'd get a call from the guy at TD Bank or whatever. They'd come in and meet with me, and then they would ghost me, or they would say, oh, sorry, yeah, we can't work with you. So I would say to them on the phone, listen, don't waste your time. Don't waste my time. We're a small business. We average this much in receivables. We're looking for a line of credit against it, yada, yada, yada. And they would still come in, do this dog and pony, tell how great they are. And then they'd be like, oh, yeah, we can't work with you, because the underwriting became impossible. And this is all because of Dodd-Frank. So that was the second thing. What else? Did race relations get better under Obama? What? Just the opposite. That was the beginning of this splintering. And I'm a guy that played college basketball, so I was merit-based. I didn't get a scholarship because I was white. I got a scholarship because I could play basketball. The guys I played with got scholarships because they could play basketball. And we had blacks and whites, and everybody got along. And we didn't think of ourselves as black or white. We thought of ourselves as, I'm a 2 guard. You're a 3. You're a 5. That was it. You can play. You can't play. You're good. You suck. I'm going to take you on this next trip up the court. I'm going to stick. At the time we didn't have 3-pointers, but I'm going to stick a bomb. Down. I'm going to shoot from downtown and put your lights out. Right. That's what we did. Nobody cared whether you were black or white. We just cared if you had game. That was it. So when you really think back about these presidencies and you think about how certain places embraced certain people despite all the negativity that they were bringing, you have to ask yourself, again, just be like, erase all of your preconceived ideas and go look at what's taken place. And ask yourself, George Bush, Republican, weapons of mass destruction. 2 wars, trillions of dollars. By the way, supported by folks like Hillary Clinton. Obama, on the other hand, was against it. Okay, good for him. But you had Democrats and Republicans pushing for war. Why? And so much treasure, human treasure, dollars, just wasted. Republican and Democrat, folks. So when I see the politics of travel, I want to just bitch slap these people, be like, for the love of God, would you stop putting politics at the center of your freaking life? Stop putting politics in the middle of travel and enjoying the time you have on earth. We aren't here forever, folks. It's over in the blink of an eye. Yet you're going to have your life and lifestyle dictated by a man you will never meet, whose policies directly really don't impact you. Oh, but the tariffs, okay. That's go to your government. Look at Alberta. Alberta is like, we want to break away from Ottawa because they send their riches to Ottawa and they get nothing in return if you listen to their politicians. So what's going to happen with them? Who knows? Maybe they are the 51st state. But at least look internally and give the rest of it literally a rest, because you're not making any sense. And obviously, it's not good for the world. It's not good for your personal health and well-being. It just isn't. It's just, you're just consuming this negativity and you're letting it dictate your life. I prefer to live happy and enjoy life. That's how I roll. And I would encourage people to get out and travel and to meet people, because we don't care where you're from. We don't care what language you speak. We don't care what the color of your skin is. If you want to come here on vacation, because I see people all the time. I live right around the corner from Lauderdale by the Sea. I'm down there a few times a week. It's packed with tourists. And I love seeing it, because I love seeing people enjoy themselves. And I don't care if they're Canadian, they're Latin American, they're South American, they're Brazilian, I mean, they're Russian, whatever. It's awesome that we all get to enjoy the beach, the music, the food, the energy, because that's what it's all about. Let's talk about the cruise guys. So, very quickly, a family, and I'll pull this up for you. A family was coming from Georgia. And as they were coming from Georgia, where is it? There it is. This is a website called Cruise Overload. They showed up in search, so good for them. I don't know the site at all. But basically, Carnival fires back after guests missed ship due to traffic nightmare. So they got stuck in bumper-to-bumper traffic on I-75. They were stranded close to their Port Canaveral. And when they got there, the ship was still there, still in sight, but they were locked out of the terminal and they were denied boarding. So there's a wave of debate. Well, here's what I would tell you. You're driving 450 miles. Okay? If you're averaging 70 miles an hour, which is generous, any math whizzes out there? About 6.5 hours, just a shade under 6.5 hours, with no stops. That's a lot of uncertainty. And unfortunately, they got hit. They got there an hour before the ship was scheduled to depart. But they'd already closed embarkation. There are security issues. Just like a plane, if it says the gate closes 15 minutes before departure, if you are not at the gate, you will not be able to board. They're not going to open the door for you and let you board. They're not going to open and bring back employees because you got there late at the cruise terminal. They're not doing that. And so you have to understand the rules. And I think it's John Hield, right? John Hield. He explained that Homeland Security requires cruise lines to file a final passenger manifest at least 60 minutes before sailing. Once it's submitted, no additional guests can board regardless of delays. Oh, and he even used this. I just used the airline. He likened the process to airline closing aircraft doors. Once those plane doors are closed, no late passengers are permitted aboard. It's the same for ships. And here's the kicker. It always shows you a final boarding time. So you got a final boarding time and says, if you don't make it, you get nothing. Now, it sucks that happened. But again, like I tell people, get there early. Take a hotel room for the night. Make sure you get out, and get on your ship. What's nice is once that ship has been, disembarked and they've done the wave of general cleaning and then they open it up for embarkation, you can get on hours and hours before the ship actually sails and your vacation starts there. One of the best trips I ever took was when my daughter was about 4 months old. My son was about 2.5, and we went on a Bermuda cruise. And I brought my mom and my mother-in-law on. And the idea was they were going to, help us watch the kids so we could go get some, mommy and daddy time, go get some drinks, go to dinner, whatever. I didn't factor in that my mom's mom won the World Series of Poker back in 1981. And my mom's a gambling addict, and she did not want her gambling to be disrupted by watching a 4-month-old or a 2.5-year-old. So my mother-in-law, Helen, got a lot of the duty, but it was kind of funny. But anyway, with that said, we drove down because it sailed out of New York, and it was a Bermuda cruise. We were living in Rye. It was about a 35-minute drive down the west side to the west side of Manhattan. We pulled in, we parked, we got our luggage, we walked to the pier, and 20 minutes later, we were on vacation. So like door to door, it was like an hour to go from filling up the car and putting it in drive to being on vacation. we were still looking at the skyline of New York City. It was fantastic. And then it was so nice because everything was self-contained. You know, the kids did great. My son did some of the club stuff. The little one couldn't do that. She's only 4 months old, but she was the youngest kid on the boat, so she got a lot of attention, and we had a great vacation, except for my damn mother, who refused. Well, she didn't really refuse. She had a very limited amount of time where she could take care of the baby because she would stay up and gamble till, you know, they turned off the lights basically in the casino, if they ever did. And then she'd finally crash and she'd sleep till like 3 or 4 in the afternoon. I mean, that's a commitment, not to the kid, but that's a commitment. But I love my mom. May she continue to rest in peace and be up there playing blackjack with Jesus and the rest of the crew. Now, the final thing I'm going to get into, your travel perks. Just recently, there was a woman, I think it was a woman, who lost her TSA PreCheck and global entry. And it happened 3 days after she was basically trying to impede federal law enforcement and ICE from carrying out their duties on the immigration side. So here's a warning to folks. If you try to impede law enforcement, and we've seen it now over and over again, it's another reason why travel is down to the US, because the amplification of something that happens in a state thousands of miles away affects a state like Florida because people think the whole country's on fire. It's just the mentality of the media, and it's also how some of these folks look at the media itself. So you have all of that going on. And they believe what they see when they see like, oh my God, they're just ripping people off the street. They're just, no, that's not what they're doing. Oh my God, they kidnapped a 5-year-old boy. Oh, for the love of God. There's still people talking about that. When the father, and we can never overcome all of the lies, but thank God there are people out there that can speak the truth and can share information. So just as an example, I've seen so many posts about the 5-year-old boy, you know, ripped away from his family and blah, 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 separating kids. No, the father ran away, abandoned the kid. The ICE officers took care of the kid, and he was reunited with his father, ultimately, when they got the father. And Tom Homan said it best. We don't separate families. They can be deported together. If you came here illegally, we have a border. We have a sovereign country. And I think I speak for most Americans. We don't want our tax dollars while we have veterans dying in the street and homeless, living on the street. We don't want someone coming from Ecuador or El Salvador or Honduras or Mexico or 165 countries these people came from. They're all seeking asylum. They didn't pass through another country where they could have declared asylum. Right. Again, most people don't even understand the asylum process and how it actually works. But they came into our country, and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars have been spent that we don't have. We don't have. And then you see newscasts like CBS saying, well, only 14% of the people had a conviction for something violent. Okay, well, DUI, how is that categorized? How is that a violent thing? Okay. What about shoplifting? What about any host of other things that you've done? How about burglary? Is that a nonviolent crime? I mean, only 14% have convictions for violent crimes. So what do we wait till they do something violent and kill your neighbor, kill your kid? I mean, did you read about the 4 Amish folks, the whole family wiped out by a illegal truck driver in Indiana? Lake and Riley, I mean, we know that name. The nursing student in Georgia who was killed because the scumbags in Massachusetts released a guy that had a detainer by ICE. He then went and stayed with his cousin or his brother and ended up murdering that girl. Now we're going to pay to incarcerate him for the rest of his life. I think he should just be killed, but they're not doing that with the death penalty there in Georgia. That would save a lot of money, but then it would take 20 years to put him to death because of the appeal process. It's like China has some things figured out. You You can't do what you've done to the U.S. in any other country, including our border to the south, Mexico. Do you think if I just go across the border and be like, hey, I'm declaring asylum, I just want to stay here? 2 years in jail. They lock you up. Then they kick you out. Ideally, they kick you out before they have to pay to lock you up. So one must understand that we are the only country, and this really was something crazy in the last few years, where they just opened the floodgates and they say they counted 12.5 million with getaways, but that's just an estimate. It could be as high as 20, 25 million people came in to this country. Unacceptable. So when you're out protesting ICE and they're trying to do their job and you're impeding them, you are breaking federal law. You should be arrested. You should be charged. You should be convicted. And if you're impeding law enforcement, just so you know, TSA PreCheck global entry, that is a privilege. That's a privilege. You have to get fingerprinted and interviewed. I did it at Philly Airport with the customs office there many years ago. And they did a background check. They made sure I was not a criminal. They made sure that I wasn't going to be a threat based on all the factors they could look at. But if I went out and started protesting and getting in the way of federal law enforcement and causing a disruption, and they documented that, then they run that through their database and they go, oh, TSA PreCheck, global entry, that's for people that we can trust, that aren't going to be a security issue. But if you're willing to block traffic and block law enforcement on the road to impede them, you are a danger. Just ask that good lady how that worked out for her. And under that scenario, yeah, too bad. Too bad. And stop bitching on Twitter that I lost my privileges. Can you believe they did this to me? Yeah, because they documented you and they filmed you doing shit that you shouldn't have been doing, that anybody else is going to lose that privilege as a result of that. You're just lucky you're not in jail. And with that, thanks for listening. Thanks for hanging in there with me. And do me a favor, support travel agents, support TravelTube, follow us everywhere, sign up at the site. We send you the newsletter every week. That way you see what we're highlighting. And if you got something to share, reach out to me through the Travel Agents Get Featured link at the bottom of the site. And I'd be happy to schedule some time to get some of that knowledge and share it with the rest of our audience. So next time, I'm Mark Murphy, and TravelTube.com, the travel expert channel, is signing off.